Introduction: imagine waking up to headlines that the world's most vital oil route has been blocked overnight. Gas prices skyrocket, stock markets plunge, and leaders scramble to respond. But what if I told you that this isn't just a wild scenario? It's a real possibility, all because of a single narrow stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. Tucked between Iran, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates, this slender passageway is the beating heart of global energy, quietly shaping the fate of nations every single day. Yet for most people, it's just a name on a map, until crisis strikes. Why does this tiny sliver of sea hold such immense power over the world's economy? The answer lies in its unique geography and the tangled web of politics that surrounds it. Every day, massive oil tankers, some longer than skyscrapers are tall, thread their way through these waters, carrying a fifth of the world's oil supply. If anything were to disrupt this flow, the shockwaves would be felt in every corner of the globe, from bustling cities to remote villages. It's a vulnerability that world leaders know all too well, and one that keeps military strategists up at night. But the Strait of Hormuz isn't just a story about oil. It's a story about power, rivalry, and the constant threat of conflict simmering just below the surface. In recent years, tensions have flared, with attacks on ships, military standoffs, and rumors swirling about what might happen if the strait were ever closed. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the world watches nervously, knowing that a single incident here could trigger a crisis with consequences far beyond the Middle East. So, what makes the Strait of Hormuz so irreplaceable, and why does it remain at the center of global drama year after year? To understand that, we need to look closer at the geography, the politics, and the high-stakes game being played in these narrow waters. The answers might surprise you, and the risks are greater than you think. The strait's location and why it matters. To truly grasp why the Strait of Hormuz commands so much attention, you have to picture its setting, a place where geography and politics collide in the most dramatic way. The strait itself is a slender ribbon of water, just 39 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, squeezed between the rugged coastlines of Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south. On a map, it might look almost insignificant, a tiny gap connecting the vast Persian Gulf to the open waters of the Arabian Sea. But in reality, this narrow passage is the only sea route in and out of the Persian Gulf, making it the ultimate choke point for global energy supplies. What makes the Strait of Hormuz even more remarkable is how its geography has shaped the destiny of entire nations. The Persian Gulf, rich with oil and natural gas, is bordered by some of the world's most influential energy producers: Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and the UAE. All of their exports, the lifeblood of their economies, must funnel through this single vulnerable corridor. There are no alternate sea routes, no easy detours. Every supertanker loaded with crude oil or liquefied natural gas must navigate these waters, threading a path between territorial boundaries that are hotly contested and heavily patrolled. But the strait's importance isn't just about what passes through it. It's also about who controls it. The northern shore belongs to Iran, a country with a long history of tense relations with its neighbors in the west. To the south, Oman and the UAE keep a watchful eye on every ship that enters or leaves. The proximity of these rival powers means that even the smallest incident, a misunderstanding, a stray missile, or a sudden military exercise, can escalate into a full-blown crisis. And with so much of the world's energy supply at stake, the consequences of any disruption are almost unimaginable. It's this unique blend of geography and politics that makes the Strait of Hormuz a perpetual flashpoint. Every day, the world's largest oil tankers and gas carriers pass within sight of military bases, patrol boats, and surveillance drones. The tension is always there, just beneath the surface, as each country tries to assert its influence over this critical waterway. And as we'll see, the stakes only get higher when you consider just how much of the world depends on what happens in these narrow waters. But the real story of the strait isn't just about maps and borders. It's about the staggering volume of energy that flows through it, and the global consequences if that flow were ever interrupted. The lifeblood of global energy every day. A silent procession of colossal ships glides through the Strait of Hormuz, each one carrying a cargo that powers the modern world. It's easy to overlook the sheer scale of what moves through these waters, but the numbers are nothing short of staggering. On average, more than 21 million barrels of oil pass through the strait every single day. To put that into perspective, that's enough oil to fill over 1,300 Olympic-sized swimming pools every day. This isn't just a regional supply. It's about 21% of the world's total daily oil consumption, all funneled through a channel barely wide enough for two supertankers to pass side by side. But oil isn't the only resource making this journey. The strait also sees a quarter of the world's traded natural gas flow through its narrow lanes, loaded onto massive carriers bound for energy-hungry markets across Asia and beyond. The economies of countries like China, India, Japan, South Korea, and Singapore are directly tied to the uninterrupted flow of these resources. For them, a single day of disruption could mean factory shutdowns, power shortages, and economic turmoil rippling across continents. The world's dependence on this one choke point is so intense that even rumors of trouble, an attack on a tanker, a military drill, or a diplomatic standoff, can send global oil prices soaring within hours. What's even more remarkable is the choreography required to keep this lifeline open. The strait's shipping lanes are tightly regulated, with each vessel following precise routes to avoid collisions and stay within safe waters. The largest ships, known as very large and ultra-large crude carriers, are so massive that they require deep channels and careful navigation, especially when passing through the narrowest sections. Any misstep, whether from human error or hostile action, could block the passage and bring the global energy trade to a grinding halt. This vulnerability isn't lost on world leaders or energy traders. The Strait of Hormuz has become a barometer for global stability, with every incident or escalation in the region watched closely by governments, investors, and ordinary people alike. The stakes are enormous and the margin for error is razor-thin. As the world's appetite for energy continues to grow, the pressure on this narrow waterway only intensifies, making it not just a route for oil and gas, but the very lifeblood of the global economy. And as we'll see, the question of who controls this flow and how secure it really is has led to a high-stakes contest that shows no signs of ending. A high-stakes game: who controls the strait? Control over the Strait of Hormuz isn't just a matter of geography. It's a high-stakes contest that has drawn in regional powers, global superpowers, and a web of competing interests. On one side, Iran commands the northern shore, its coastline bristling with military installations, missile batteries, and naval bases. For decades, Iranian leaders have made it clear that they see the strait as a vital national interest, and they've repeatedly warned that if their own oil exports are threatened, they could respond by disrupting the flow for everyone else. This threat isn't just bluster. It's a strategic card that Iran has played during moments of crisis, from the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s to the more recent standoffs over nuclear negotiations and international sanctions. Across the water, Oman and the United Arab Emirates keep a close watch on their own territories, aware that any instability could spill over into their ports and cities. The UAE, in particular, has invested heavily in its Navy and Coast Guard, determined to protect its shipping lanes and maintain its reputation as a safe hub for global trade. Oman, with its long tradition of diplomacy, often finds itself playing the role of mediator, quietly working behind the scenes to ease tensions and keep the strait open for business. But the contest for control doesn't stop with the countries that border the strait. The United States, long dependent on Middle Eastern oil and committed to protecting its allies in the region, maintains a powerful naval presence in the nearby Gulf of Oman and the broader Arabian Sea. American warships, often joined by British and French vessels, patrol the waters, ready to respond to any threat against commercial shipping. Their presence is both a deterrent and a reminder that the world is watching, and that any attempt to close the strait would trigger an international crisis. In recent years, the stakes have only grown higher. Naval confrontations have become more frequent, with Iranian patrol boats shadowing foreign tankers and Western warships conducting freedom of navigation operations. There have been tense standoffs, close calls, and even the occasional seizure of ships accused of violating sanctions or straying into disputed waters. Each incident sends ripples of anxiety through global markets, as traders and policymakers wonder just how close the world is to a major escalation. Yet, for all the military hardware and diplomatic maneuvering, the reality is that no single country can claim absolute control over the Strait of Hormuz. The shipping lanes themselves weave through a patchwork of territorial waters, forcing every vessel to navigate a complex legal and political landscape. It's a delicate balance, one that depends on constant vigilance, careful negotiation, and a shared understanding that the cost of conflict would be catastrophic for everyone involved. And as tensions simmer and rivalries deepen, the question of who truly controls the strait remains as urgent and as unresolved as ever. But the real danger lies in the flashpoints that can erupt without warning, turning this high-stakes game into a global crisis overnight. Tensions and flashpoints. The Strait of Hormuz is more than just a busy shipping lane. It's a powder keg where the smallest spark can ignite a global crisis. Over the past decade, the world has watched as this narrow waterway has become the stage for a series of high-stakes confrontations, each one raising the specter of conflict and sending shockwaves through international markets. The tension here is constant, fueled by a mix of military posturing, political brinkmanship, and the ever-present threat of sabotage. One of the most dramatic flashpoints came in 2019, when a string of mysterious attacks targeted oil tankers near the mouth of the strait. Explosions ripped through the hulls of several ships, and while no group officially claimed responsibility, Western officials quickly pointed fingers at Iran. Tehran denied involvement, but the message was clear. The strait's security could be upended in an instant. Insurance rates for ships soared, and oil prices spiked as the world braced for the possibility of open conflict. These incidents weren't isolated. In the years since, there have been drone strikes, missile launches, and even the dramatic seizure of foreign vessels by Iranian forces, each event ratcheting up the pressure and keeping the world on edge. But it's not just direct attacks that make the Strait of Hormuz so volatile. The mere threat of closure is enough to send markets into turmoil. Iranian officials have repeatedly warned that if their interests are threatened, whether by sanctions, military action, or diplomatic isolation, they could block the strait, choking off the flow of oil to the world. While actually closing the strait would be a drastic move, even the suggestion is a powerful bargaining chip, one that Iran has used to gain leverage in negotiations with the West. The United States and its allies, in turn, have responded with shows of force, deploying aircraft carriers, fighter jets, and advanced missile defense systems to the region. The result is a tense standoff, with both sides wary of making the first move, but unwilling to back down. Adding to the uncertainty are the rumors and unverified reports that swirl around every incident. Social media lights up with speculation whenever a ship goes dark or a drone is spotted near the shipping lanes. Some claim that shadowy groups are plotting new attacks, while others suggest that secret negotiations are underway to prevent disaster. The truth is often hard to pin down, but the sense of unease is very real. For the countries that depend on the strait, every day brings a new round of anxiety. Will the oil keep flowing? Or will the next headline signal the start of something much bigger? The Strait of Hormuz remains a place where the line between peace and crisis is razor thin. With so many interests colliding in such a confined space, it takes only a single miscalculation to set off a chain reaction. And as the world's appetite for energy grows, the risks only multiply, making the strait not just a strategic choke point, but a perpetual flashpoint for global tension. Yet, even as countries prepare for the worst, they're also racing to find ways to reduce their vulnerability, searching for alternatives that might one day make the strait less of a single point of failure. But as we'll see, escaping the shadow of Hormuz is easier said than done. The race for alternatives, with so much of the world's energy supply funneled through the Strait of Hormuz, It's no surprise that countries have spent decades searching for ways to reduce their dependence on this single, vulnerable choke point. The idea is simple. If you can find another way to move oil and gas to market, you can sidestep the risks of conflict, sabotage, or sudden closure. But in practice, building alternatives has proven to be a monumental challenge, one that only a handful of nations have managed to tackle with any real success. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are at the forefront of this race. Both countries have invested billions in pipelines that bypass the strait entirely, allowing them to ship oil from inland fields to ports on the Red Sea or directly to the Gulf of Oman. Saudi Arabia's east-west pipeline, for example, stretches more than 200 kilometers across the desert, capable of moving up to 5 million barrels of oil per day to the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea. The UAE's Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, meanwhile, runs straight to the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman, with a capacity of 1.5 million barrels per day. These projects are engineering marvels, designed to keep oil flowing even if the strait is blocked. But even these impressive pipelines have their limits. In reality, they can only handle a fraction of the total exports that normally pass through the Strait of Hormuz. In 2018, for instance, Saudi Arabia's pipeline was moving just 2 million barrels per day, less than half its maximum capacity, while the UAE's pipeline was operating at about a third of its potential. The reasons are complex: logistical bottlenecks, maintenance issues, and the simple fact that most of the region's oil infrastructure is still oriented toward the Persian Gulf. For other countries, like Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar, the options are even more limited. Their oil and gas exports are almost entirely dependent on the strait, with no viable alternative routes in sight. There have been attempts to build new pipelines across neighboring countries, but these projects are often derailed by political disputes, security concerns, or outright conflict. Pipelines that cross borders are vulnerable to sabotage and can become bargaining chips in regional power struggles. As a result, many of these routes have fallen into disuse or remain unfinished, leaving the vast majority of Gulf oil and gas exports as exposed as ever. The search for alternatives isn't just about pipelines either. Some countries have explored the idea of expanding their strategic oil reserves, building up stockpiles that could cushion the blow of a temporary disruption. Others are investing in renewable energy, hoping to reduce their reliance on imported oil altogether. But these solutions take time, money, and political will, resources that are often in short supply. For now, the Strait of Hormuz remains the world's most critical energy artery, and the race to find alternatives is far from over. Every new pipeline, every diplomatic breakthrough, and every technological innovation is a step toward greater security. But the reality is that the world is still a long way from escaping the shadow of this narrow, contested waterway. And as tensions continue to simmer, the question isn't just whether alternatives can be built, but whether they'll be enough to prevent the next crisis from spiraling out of control. The search for a solution continues, but the clock is always ticking. Rumors, speculation, and the shadow war beneath the surface of official statements and public diplomacy. The Strait of Hormuz is a battleground for shadowy maneuvers, secret deals, and a constant swirl of rumors. In a region where information is tightly controlled and every move is scrutinized, speculation often fills the gaps left by silence. The result is a climate of uncertainty, where whispers of back-channel negotiations, covert operations, and unconfirmed threats can be just as powerful as open conflict. In recent years, reports have surfaced about secret talks between Gulf states and Iran, with mediators shuttling quietly between capitals in hopes of easing tensions. Some insiders claim that Oman, with its reputation for neutrality, has hosted discreet meetings aimed at preventing a catastrophic showdown in the strait. While the details remain murky, the very existence of these talks suggests that all sides understand the stakes and the risks of letting tensions spiral out of control. Yet, for every rumor of peace, there are just as many stories of sabotage and subterfuge. It's been said that intelligence agencies from around the world are locked in a silent contest for influence in the region. Drones and surveillance planes crisscross the skies, monitoring ship movements and scanning for signs of trouble. Cyber attacks targeting oil infrastructure have been reported, with some experts suggesting that state-backed hackers are probing for weaknesses that could be exploited in a crisis. Meanwhile, shadowy groups with unclear allegiances have claimed responsibility for attacks on tankers, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. The presence of outside powers only adds to the intrigue. The United States and its allies maintain a formidable military presence, but in recent years, China has quietly expanded its naval footprint in the region. Some analysts believe that Beijing's growing involvement is part of a broader strategy to secure its own energy supplies and assert influence over global trade routes. This has sparked speculation about a new era of great power competition, with the Strait of Hormuz as a potential flashpoint. Social media and 24-hour news cycles amplify every incident, real or rumored. A single tweet about a ship going dark or an unconfirmed explosion can send oil prices soaring and trigger frantic responses from governments and markets alike. In this environment, perception often matters as much as reality, and the line between fact and fiction is easily blurred. For the millions who depend on the steady flow of oil and gas through the strait, these rumors and shadow games are more than just background noise. They're a reminder of how fragile the system really is. Every new report, every hint of a secret deal or a hidden threat, keeps the world guessing about what might happen next. And as the shadow war continues, the question remains: will quiet diplomacy and covert action be enough to keep the peace? Or is the next crisis already brewing just out of sight? The uncertainty lingers, setting the stage for whatever comes next in this high-stakes drama. What's next? The uncertain future looking ahead, the future of the Strait of Hormuz is anything but certain. The world's dependence on this narrow waterway isn't likely to disappear overnight, and every new development in the region seems to add another layer of complexity to an already tangled web. As global energy demand continues to rise, the pressure on the strait only intensifies, making it a focal point not just for oil and gas, but for the shifting balance of power in the 21st century. One of the most pressing concerns is the environmental risk that comes with so much traffic in such a confined space. With hundreds of massive tankers passing through each month, the threat of a catastrophic oil spill is always present. Military tensions only heighten this danger. One stray missile or accidental collision could unleash an environmental disaster, devastating marine life and crippling the fishing industries of neighboring countries. Environmental groups have repeatedly warned that the strait's fragile ecosystem is already under strain, and a major incident could take decades to repair. At the same time, technological advances are beginning to reshape the landscape. The rise of renewable energy, electric vehicles, and new forms of energy storage could eventually reduce the world's reliance on oil shipped through Hormuz. Some experts predict that as countries invest more in solar, wind, and hydrogen, the strategic importance of the strait might gradually decline. But for now, these changes are happening slowly, and the world's appetite for oil remains as strong as ever. Meanwhile, the political landscape is shifting in unpredictable ways. New alliances are forming, old rivalries are flaring up, and outside powers are becoming more deeply involved. China's growing naval presence in the region, for example, has raised questions about how the balance of power might change in the years ahead. Some analysts believe that a new era of competition between global superpowers could play out in the waters of the strait, with each side seeking to protect its interests and secure its share of the world's energy supply. There's also the ever-present risk of miscalculation. With so many military forces operating in close proximity, the potential for an accidental clash is always there. A single misunderstanding or technical glitch could escalate into a much larger conflict, drawing in countries from around the world and threatening the stability of global markets. The lessons of history are clear. In a place as tense and contested as the Strait of Hormuz, even the smallest incident can have outsized consequences. Yet, for all the uncertainty, one thing remains constant: the strait's role as a critical artery for the global economy. As long as the world relies on oil and gas, the Strait of Hormuz will remain a flashpoint, watched closely by governments, businesses, and ordinary people alike. The future may hold new technologies, shifting alliances, and unexpected challenges, but the stakes will always be high. And as the world changes, the question lingers: will the Strait remain a source of tension and risk? Or could it one day become a symbol of cooperation and stability? Only time will tell, but for now, the world can't afford to look away. Conclusion: as we step back and look at the story of the Strait of Hormuz, it's clear that this narrow waterway is far more than just a line on a map. It's a living crossroads where geography, politics, and economics collide, shaping the fate of nations and the daily lives of billions. Every drop of oil that passes through these waters carries with it the weight of global expectations, the hopes of energy-hungry economies, and the anxieties of leaders who know just how fragile this lifeline truly is. The Strait's unique position has made it both a blessing and a curse for the countries that surround it. On one hand, it's a source of immense wealth and influence, giving Gulf states a powerful role in the world's energy markets. On the other, it's a constant source of vulnerability, a single point of failure that could, in a matter of hours, send shockwaves through every corner of the globe. The world's reliance on this one passageway is a reminder of how interconnected and yet how precarious our modern systems have become. What's perhaps most striking is how the Strait has become a stage for both open confrontation and quiet diplomacy. Military ships and surveillance drones may dominate the headlines, but behind the scenes, a complex dance of negotiation, compromise, and sometimes even secret cooperation is always underway. The rumors of back-channel talks, the shadowy cyber skirmishes, and the ever-present threat of escalation all point to a reality where peace is never guaranteed. And the next crisis could be just one miscalculation away. Yet, the story of the Strait of Hormuz is also a story of resilience and adaptation. Countries are racing to build new pipelines, diversify their economies, and invest in alternative energy sources. The world is slowly waking up to the risks of over-reliance on a single choke point, and while the solutions are far from simple, the search for greater security is relentless. The Strait's future will be shaped not just by the actions of governments and militaries, but by the choices of ordinary people, consumers, innovators, and citizens who demand a safer, more stable world. So as we watch the ships glide through these narrow waters, it's worth asking, could the next global crisis really start here? Or could this ancient passage, so often a symbol of division and danger, one day become a model for cooperation and shared prosperity? The answers aren't clear, but one thing is certain: the world will keep watching the Strait of Hormuz, knowing that its story is far from over. And in a world where the unexpected is always just around the corner, the fate of this tiny stretch of water may hold the key to our collective future.